The big topic around the D'Souza home over the past several months has been, you guessed it, COVID-19. A topic that comes up, I would say, many, many times a day. And the reason for this, the centrality of this topic in the D'Souza household is this character right here, my wife, Debbie D'Souza, who is, I would have to say, a little obsessed with COVID. She's going to try to justify her obsession. I'm going to try to puncture some holes in it because I think it actually is a little bit of a mania. But she, for her part, thinks that I am suffering from slight delusion. So welcome to the show. I thought we would air some of our family back and forth for people to hear, because we actually don't have quite the same view of COVID.
Yes, we do not. And hi, honey. How are you?
I'm fine. Clearly, our battles over COVID have not diminished our mutual affection. But
No.
tell people your take on this.
Yes.
Why are you obsessed with COVID?
Okay, so COVID is the monster that I've always been afraid of. And just to kind of let everybody know, I've been a germaphobe for years. In the early 90s, I taught kindergarten and I kept getting strep throat. And a doctor friend of mine told me, Debbie, do not touch your face. Don't touch your eyes. Make sure your hands are clean. I think I bought the first big jug of Germ-X back in the late 90s. And I would use it all the time, and I would put it in little containers before they had them. So I've always been prepared for COVID. And so you can imagine.
And this is why our house currently has like 700 masks and like
Pretty
big
much.
jars everywhere. And
I was
feel
one
like
of
I'm
those,
living in a hospital.
I was one of those people that, you know, when we would go on trips, I would clean the airplane, literally. The seats, I had my own, alcohol wipes, and I would clean up the seat, and I would clean the headrest and the tray, and people would look at me like I was insane. And this was all before COVID. So you can imagine that now I take this virus very seriously.
Now, I will confess that once you put me under this kind of cleanliness regimen, which you
Yes.
admit is the product of a kind of germophobia,
Yes.
it did have this positive effect, and that is when I was on the speaking circuit, I would get 3 humongous colds a year. I mean, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be coughing for like days nonstop. But once I started washing my hands and not touching my face, you say I still touch my face, but
And the Purell. I made you Purell. Every time you'd shake somebody's hand, I would Purell. You thought I was crazy.
I thought the daily Purell kind of did it. You don't have to Purell
No.
every time you turn left and
Yeah.
turn right. But the net effect I was going to say is my colds vanished. I mean, when was the last time I had a cold? It's been
probably 3-4 years.
Yeah, and
now.
you haven't had one in
A long time. I think the first time I got a cold in 20 years was when you gave it to me back when we were doing Hillary's America. Okay, I won't go into that, but
Okay.
but you know.
But let's come back to COVID for a minute.
Yes.
because this is a real virus, I think we both think, but
Yes.
you agree it's been politically manipulated by the left.
Absolutely has. Absolutely. It's a real virus, but it is really interesting how the left, as tyrannical as the left is, has taken a virus and made an excuse out of it to legislate and just dictate what they want you to do and not do. And as you say, they interestingly made it to where we suffered financially for it. I mean, really big. So had they not closed down the economy, had people just, wearing masks, I'm a mask person. I'm going to say it right here. I wear a mask. I do. I think it does protect me. But, and protects my elderly mother, who is very high risk. And I have had relatives die of COVID. So again.
Since Debbie's in the confessional mode, we also may as well tell you she actually likes Fauci. She likes Fauci. Now, she admits that she would like him a little bit more. I think you admit that you would like him a little more if he was a little more consistent,
exactly.
Right? What's your beef with Fauci?
Right. So Fauci, had he, when all of the protests and everything happened after the George Floyd incident, how he came out and he was getting mad at the rallies, but he was perfectly fine with those protests. That's when I was like, wait a minute. COVID doesn't care whether it's a rally or a protest, but he didn't seem to think that. So that's when I was like, he's political. He's definitely taking it political. However, I do believe in some of the things he says about the virus because, as you know, I listened to a podcast about vaccines. I mean, about this particular COVID vaccine. I listened to a daily podcast. So I am very, well-versed on this vaccine and COVID, but I definitely think it was politicized.
Now, you do think also, and I'd like you to say a word about this, that Trump's position on COVID hurt him in the election. And you had an idea for what Trump could have done once he got COVID that unfortunately he didn't do. And I do agree that had he done this, it would have actually helped a lot. What should Trump have done once he got COVID? How could he have responded a little differently that might have stood him a little better with the voters?
Right. So he should have looked at the camera and said, listen, I got COVID, but I got cured really quickly from it. I'm going to make sure every American gets the exact same treatment that I got. And together we will fight this virus. I would have loved to have heard that from him.
And you thought he was overall a little dismissive of the virus and that unnerved people a little bit. They felt that he didn't provide the leadership that he could have on this subject.
I heard from some
I think he was reacting to the left's view of it. And that happens in politics where they say, let's lock everything down. And then you're likely to react and go, wait a minute, you guys are exploiting. So I think that's understandable why Trump did what he did. But nevertheless, you think it was a political negative for him in 2020.
I think it hurt him with some people. Yes, I do. Definitely. Because a lot of people told me, they said, I really wish that he would have been a little bit more on it with COVID. And these are people that aren't necessarily political, right? And so hearing from them, I kind of got the vibe that there were some people that weren't on board with being dismissive of the virus or thought that the virus was a hoax or any of those things. There was a good number of people like that. So I definitely think that would have helped him had he addressed, at one of the debates, because he made it sound as though he got cured from it, but he never actually said, okay, I want everybody to have the same treatment I had, So anyway, that's just
sometimes even out of germophobia come very good things. And one very good thing that's come out of Debbie's germophobia, I have to admit, is this podcast. Because Debbie was getting really nervous about me speaking. I did like 9 events last October, of course.
11.
11?
11.
And you were freaking out the whole time.
Every time he would go, I would say, okay, you're going to come back with Corona. I'm going to have to go in the other bedroom and I'm going to...
and you were literally going on Facebook and you were spotting pictures of me taking photos with people and you were like, where was your mask? Where was your mask?
Yes.
And I was like, ugh.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, the bottom line of it is
I drove you nuts, honey. I'm sorry.
You did drive me nuts. But what I'm saying is one good thing about it is we were more at home, traveling less, and so you pitched to me. You're like, hey, you should really pick up on the idea of the podcast. So ironically, there's a silver lining of sorts, which is to say that with the theaters shut down, with me traveling less, I have the opportunity to do a daily podcast, which before, as you know, would have been utterly impossible for me to pull off.
Exactly. And it's been great fun. This is number 15, 3 weeks in.
And you're the producer, and you put in, how many hours a day?
I probably put in about 10 hours a day.
For a 1-hour podcast. Wow.
Yeah, but I'm getting better.
No, but podcasts take planning. People don't realize that actually, it's not just a case of just winging it, even though you say I can do it.
Yes.
I like to think about these issues beforehand, or we organize it out, and then we kind of put it out there. Yeah. So anyway, that's a little window into the life of Dinesh and Debbie, and the way that we do the podcast together and the way we talk about Corona. I hope this has been helpful to you.